Greetings. Welcome to our knitting adventures at the Rose and the Bee. My name is Daniela. I'm very excited to share this project with you and to teach you a way to knit a seamless sweater in a way in which you will be able to make customized designs of your own. Once you know this basic sweater project pattern, you will be able to not only choose different colors and types of yarn, but also to learn a new stitch and incorporate it into your design. Learn a new color pattern, incorporate it into this basic sweater design. It's beginner friendly, but also open to variations and customizing to any way that you can imagine. So as you start this project, please remember to do every step we do together in these tutorial episodes, for it will help you. And it will also help you know this project inside and out so that you can customize it later in the future and knit your own versions of it. You will want to choose the yarn that you will enjoy, but you will also want to make sure you're choosing the needles that are right for that yarn and for the stiffness or flexibility of the sweater that you want to have. You will want to have a way to keep track of your progress. So a tiny little knitting journal notebook will be so very helpful to you. Now we're going to learn a few basic techniques that you're going to need in the episodes that are going to follow.
Let's cast on. You will see me here using one method for casting on. We've used this in previous projects. It's one of the first methods people learn when they start knitting. So I suspect many of you will be familiar with this way of casting on. If you have a different cast on method that you prefer, it shall work with this project smoothly. For our skill practice and gauge swatch, we will cast on 16 stitches. After we cast on, I will show you a way to do a foundation row for 2-2 rib that will make the edge, if you look at it from the bottom, from the side, follow the wave of 2 knit 2 purl. You don't have to do the foundation row in the same way, but I hope you will take the opportunity, at least on this gauge swatch, to try it and see how you like this technique. There are various ways. This one, I think, is suitable for beginners who feel ready to learn something new. So this is what I mean. Slip the first stitch, then purl 2 stitches, now we are going to go under the work, through the stitch, slip, and twist. And now put it back and knit it. Let's do one more. Under the work, through the stitch, slip, twist, put it back, and knit. Now purl 2. Let's do 2 knit stitches in this way again. Under, through, slip, twist, knit. One more. Under, through, slip, twist, and knit. Purl 2 stitches. Again. Again, give it a try on this swatch. See how you like it. If you don't like it, you don't have to do it. This project will work well even if you just normally start knit 2, purl 2 for your bottom rib. Now we start the next row and we knit and purl normally. We will want to work 11 rows of our 2 knit 2 purl rib on this swatch. On the sweater, we will have a different number, but for this gauge swatch, let's do 11. We get to practice the skills we need and prepare the gauge. You might be wondering about the type of yarn and the needle size. I am using Lion Brand's Respun yarn and 5mm needles. It's creating a loose, airy knit, which will be a nice spring sweater. I think this one will be for me. In the opening slide, you saw the same sweater made from different yarn with a tighter knit, making a more cold weather garment. You could use other types of yarn. You could use cotton for a basic late spring or early fall or even summer sweater. You could use bamboo silk. You could use wool or fisherman's wool from Lion Brand will work well for this project if you want pure wool sweater as well. So think about where you're going to wear your sweater and use the opportunity when you're making this test swatch to feel the yarn, to feel how it knits, and to feel whether it will be suitable for the time you are going to want to wear it. Let's keep knitting our 2-2 rib. Remember to always slip the first stitch. Now our seamless sweater will be knit in the round, so there will be no turning rows. As I said, you can use this cast on method and foundation row. You can see below my fingers how the edge of the rib is following the shape of the rib, but you don't have to do that if you don't feel ready. If you'd rather just cast on the way you usually do and switch to 2 knit 2 purl, you can definitely do that and still get a beautiful result. We will use the same 2-2 rib on both the bottom rib of the sweater and the bottom ribs of the sleeves. This beginner-friendly seamless sweater is worked from the bottom up towards the top, so the cast-off edge will be at the neck. So for me, this is the 11th row of this rib pattern test swatch. In the next row, we will switch to Stockinette Stitch. Here, we can feel the rib. You can start deciding if you like the yarn you want to use, if you like the needle size you want to use. So now to transition to stockinette stitch, we're going to knit all stitches. So this is our knit row. Stockinette stitch is done by knitting one row, purling one row. Now you turn and you purl all stitches across. Remember, we have 16 stitches. We don't do any decreases on this test piece. Turn and do a knit row. And you keep alternating knit row, purl row, knit row, purl row. So you're seeing already that if you can do knit and purl stitches, if you know any way of casting on the stitches, you can do this project, and you can even customize it and make beautiful seamless sweater. If you're an advanced knitter, you can customize it with various color work or cable patterns and so on, but I will focus on keeping it beginner friendly throughout this series. We want to work 11 rows in stockinette stitch as well before we cast off. So let's take a look at our piece here. You can see that the use of these needles for my choice of yarn is creating an airy knit. Now I want to cast off You can watch me here cast off 2 purlwise, 2 knitwise. Even though my swatch piece doesn't end with the rib, our sweater project will end with the rib. So you want to practice that. We will use this cast off method and cast off 2 knitwise, 2 purlwise for practice. It's not going to give you a full effect on this swatch piece, but it's good practice, and you will be ready to use it when the time comes. And the last stitch, we are ready now to tie it off. Here we go. All skills practiced and a gauge measurement swatch made.
All right, the very last thing in this episode is taking measurements and deciding how many stitches you're going to need and what type of yarn you're going to use.
Now we look at the notebook to see the measurements and to choose our yarn. If you are doing this for the very first time, I would suggest choosing the same needle size and yarn that will give you the same gauge as mine. Here you see the chart that will help you choose your size of the sweater. You will need the measurement that is called bust measurement, and we will look at what that means. You will take your favorite sweater or a sweatshirt that is very comfortable and the size you would like to match this sweater to, and this line is where you will take the measurement all around, circumference. So the measurement for this project, the way I set it up, is of the garment, not of your body. So choose the garment you like to wear and measure it all the way around, or measure half and double. Then find that circumference in this chart. The project I will do in the video will match this size, 44 inches or 112 centimeters around. At the bottom rib, I will cast on 210 stitches. And for each sleeve rib, I will be casting on 44 stitches. Now, you might have a smaller or larger sweater measurements. And here you can remind yourself, this is where you want to take that measurement. End to end, on the body of your favorite sweater or sweatshirt or shirt that you want your sweater to match. That will be a good way for this beginner-friendly project to be measured. Once you find that, then you will find it in this chart and copy it in your notebook. You will copy the size and the number of stitches for the sleeve and the number of stitches for the bottom rib. And now you're going to test your gauge. When I was showing you the skills you will need, I showed you casting on 16 stitches and we did 11 rounds here, 11 here, so that was 22 rounds in all, plus the cast off round 23 and the cast on 24. So we should be able to measure this swatch, which served to teach us the skills we'll need to see the gauge. You want to make sure that you fully unroll the edges so that you measure really correctly. You don't want your measurement to be off because you measured things while they're curled up. You can also take an iron, a low heat iron, and press your swatch to check. You don't want to stretch, you only want to flatten it. And you want to measure where the stockinette stitch is worked, not where the rib was worked. Here we go. So I need 10 centimeters or 4 inches. And that is what I get. When I unfurl the edges, I get 10 centimeters across or 4 inches. So make sure you unroll your swatch, flatten it. Don't stretch it. Just flatten it nice and clean. If you're using blocking tools and you're experienced with them, you can use that. If you want to press it with an iron first, you can do that, or you can also do what I'm doing here. This project is very forgiving. You're not measuring close to your body size, but the garment size. So if you're a little bit off, it will be okay. It's a forgiving, beginner-friendly design. So 10 centimeters or 4 inches is what you want. If you have less, you may want to try a larger pair of needles or a thicker yarn. If you have more, you may want to try a smaller pair of needles or thinner yarn. Do not skip the gauge step because that will really open up the door for undoing things. Once you are working on the full size of this project, it's very, very discouraging to have to unravel half of your work because you didn't do the gauge. So take time, make this little swatch, test your skills for casting on. You saw me do a long tail cast on followed by the foundation row where I was twisting the stitches around. 2 I purled and then 2 I twisted and knitted. That allowed for this. You see how my cast on edge is following the rib pattern? I suggest you give it a try. It's very satisfying to have that kind of edge in the bottom. But if you'd rather just do a normal long tail cast on, you can do that as well. Okay, yarn that I'm going to use in this project will be this recycled respun yarn by Lion brand. And the needles I'm going to use are going to be 5 millimeter or US size 8. I'm using the blush rose color. And even though they call for different needle sizes here, that is for the gauge for the projects they tested it on. I'm using it for this project in this very specific way. And I hope that that inspires you to customize this project to your yarn. Put in the comments questions on customizing. What yarn do you have? What gauge did you get as you tried? Only focus on this right now. We will talk about this part of the journal in the future episodes. So gauge, you will want 16 stitches to measure 10 centimeters left to right, and you will want to take measurement for the bust on your favorite garment, which you want the size of this sweater to match. You'll find it here. That will be how many stitches you will cast on in the next episode. You get to choose your own yarn. If you want to use the same yarn I'm using, you can get Lion Brand's Respun 100% recycled yarn, and in your favorite color, of course, and 5 millimeter needles. You want round needles with the cord And of course, a little notebook to keep track of your project.
Excellent. I hope you're ready to knit your first seamless sweater knitting in the round. Gather your supplies, and I will see you next week in the next episode where we will begin knitting the sweater.